MAGA Mike is in full-blown panic mode tonight because the Epstein vote didn't just pass, it crushed him 427-1. And now the whole country is asking the same question. What is he terrified of? You can literally see the fear on his face as he stumbles through excuses about national security, classified info, and protecting victims, all while scrambling behind the scenes with Trump to kill the bill in the Senate. And the irony? The survivors themselves are screaming, "Release the files," while MAGA leadership melts down, warning rich, innocent men might get hurt. This isn't transparency. It's a cover-up in real time, and it's collapsing fast.
Nays are 427. The nays are 1. 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
You don't see this every day. The United States House of Representatives, in one of the most sensitive scandals of our lifetime, votes 427-1 to release the Epstein files. And its Speaker of the House, MAGA Mike Johnson, looks like he's seen a ghost. That number, 427-1, is not the sound of unity. It's the sound of a cover-up starting to crack. Here's what just happened. The House overwhelmingly backed a resolution to release the Epstein files.
Future federal investigations, and we have national security concerns regarding classified information. We'll put this in the record because we need the legislative record to reflect what is the legislative intent behind this vote.
Documents tied to a serial predator who targeted girls and young women, and to a web of powerful men who circled him for years. Survivors traveled to Washington to say, in plain English, "Release the damn files." And yet the man with the gavel, who could have moved this months ago, suddenly discovered his enthusiasm only when it became clear he was going to lose. That's our core conflict tonight. The American people and survivors demanding truth versus a MAGA leadership that will do anything to control when, how, and if that truth ever comes out. Before the vote, Mike Johnson went to the House floor to deliver what he clearly hoped would be his alibi. He insisted this wasn't about protecting anyone in his party. He said the quiet part out loud, that Democrats are trying to tie President Trump somehow into this wretched scandal, and that Trump has nothing to hide. Listen to how he frames it.
They're using that as a political weapon to try to distract from their failures as a party and to try their best to try to tie President Trump somehow into this wretched scandal. The president had nothing to do with it. He's been very clear, and he has nothing to hide. And that's why he's endorsed the vote today. I suspect this vote will be probably unanimous. But here's the important point that everybody needs to understand. We have been advocates of maximum transparency, but we have also insisted that the victims be carefully protected. The Oversight Committee has been doing extraordinary work, and we've got some of the most vigorous advocates on the Republican and Democrat side on the Oversight Committee. They've been working in earnest to deliver transparency for the American people and to do it in a responsible manner.
So on one hand, Johnson tells the country, nothing to see here, Trump's totally clean, he endorses releasing the files. On the other hand, he's already telegraphing a strategy to gut this thing in the Senate, to slow walk it, to hide behind process and concerns. That's the pattern with the MAGA movement. Talk about transparency, then race back into the shadows the minute transparency might actually cost powerful men something.
See that and understand it. I'm going to vote to move this forward. I think it could be close to a unanimous vote because everybody here, all the Republicans, want to go on record to show they're for maximum transparency, but they also want to note that we're demanding that this stuff get corrected before it is ever moves through the process and is completed.
And it's not just about Trump. In a press conference before the vote, MAGA Mike laid out his real priority. He said yes, he'll move this forward. He'll support the bill, but only so he can work with the Senate to correct it, to fix all the so-called defects. Then he rolled out his big argument, that releasing the files would create new victims. The way he said it tells you who he's really worried about. Look at the inversion here. Survivors of trafficking and abuse have been fighting for years to have their stories taken seriously.
The discharge petition could create new victims, okay? Because it requires the DOJ to release information even in cases where the DOJ or the FBI has already reviewed it and determined it is not credible. It is false information. Doing this and requiring this to come out could ruin the reputations of completely innocent people, such as those who may just have known Epstein but knew nothing of his crimes, or whose names he exploited. Think of this, innocent people whose names he exploited and used to try to get close to his intended victims. Their names may be in these files, and they had nothing to do with this. And so by just haphazardly releasing it, you're going to destroy their reputations. Releasing information containing the names of innocent people would subject those innocent people to a guilt by association. It would create an entirely new group of victims who have no means to clear their names. That's a concern of Congress, and it should be. It should be.
Today, they're begging Congress to release evidence, emails, logs, and names. And Mike Johnson's first instinct is to say, what about the reputations of wealthy men who might be mentioned in those files? What about the poor billionaires whose names might be exploited? That's the through line of authoritarian politics. Power sees itself as the real victim and treats accountability as an attack. Then Johnson throws in another shield, national security. Suddenly he's warning that this resolution is dangerous because it forces the Justice Department to hand over classified information to the maximum extent possible. He claims that would undermine intelligence agencies, expose sources and methods, in other words, the familiar. We'd love to tell you the truth, but it's too dangerous to democracy routine. No one is saying dump raw intel onto the internet. The House resolution explicitly calls for redacting survivors' names.
All right. Number 5, national security concerns, okay? The discharge requires the Attorney General to release within 30 days, quote, classified information to the maximum extent possible. This ignores the principle that declassification should always rest, and always has rested, with the agency that originated the intelligence. Why? So that they can protect their critical sources and methods. It is incredibly dangerous to demand that officials or employees of the DOJ declassify materials that originated in other agencies, in intelligence agencies.
There's a legitimate process question here, but Johnson isn't acting like someone trying to solve that. He's acting like someone searching for an excuse. He wants the public to see transparency itself as reckless, as something only radicals and Democrats demand. That's how you soften people up for a slow motion cover-up. You make openness sound irresponsible. And then there's the gaslighting. Johnson tried to rewrite history right in front of the cameras, claiming that he himself put this on the floor for unanimous consent and that Democrats were the ones who blocked it. He wants viewers to believe Democrats are dragging their feet, that this 427-1 vote was just a show vote they forced him into. Here's how he spins it. But the reason this even needed a discharge petition is because Republican leadership, including Johnson, sat on it for months. Survivors and their allies had to force his hand. That's why you saw such a strange coalition on the floor. Democrats teaming up with libertarian-leaning Republicans like Thomas Massie, and yes, even Marjorie Taylor Greene, to demand that the full truth come out and to warn the Senate not to quietly kill it. Massie's speech was raw and blunt.
Oh, by the way, I'll just tell you, I put the bill on the floor for unanimous consent last Wednesday night. And guess who objected to it? The Democrats, okay? If this is so urgent and they were so concerned about getting this done and seeing justice be done and all that, they would not have blocked the request, okay? This is about politics. They blocked our unanimous consent motion to expedite their bill and made us waste all this additional time so they could have a show vote today. Republicans are ready to get the job done, to move forward so we can continue to get on to these important issues of dealing with what the American people demand and deserve for us to deal with.
He said exactly what everybody knows, but few in leadership will say out loud. That the real fear here is about rich men being embarrassed, about donors and elites being exposed. And he warned very clearly that if the Senate tries to water this down, They become part of the cover-up. You don't have to agree with Thomas Massie on anything else to recognize that he's right on that point. If this dies in the Senate under the excuse of corrections, it's not about privacy. It's about power. It's about a political class that has spent decades looking the other way, while a convicted sex offender hosted the world's elite on his private island and in his townhouses, and now doesn't want the receipts to see daylight. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the loudest MAGA voices, said this should have been the easiest thing in the world.
Like this, I called my counterpart in the Senate, Leader Thune, and I talked him through this with him and shared our deep concerns. And of course, they share those concerns as well. And so I'm very confident that when this moves forward in the process, if and when it is processed in the Senate, which there's no certainty that that will be, that they will take the time methodically to do what we have not been allowed to do in the House, to amend this discharge petition and to make sure that these protections are there. The authors of the discharge did not allow us to do that here. That's the rules here. But in the Senate, they can correct it. So under that circumstance, because of that, we know there's serious deficiencies. We know that the work of our colleagues in the Senate can address that and will. They're very conscientious and concerned, as we are, about all this. As we've insisted from the very beginning, Republicans are the only party trying to make a material difference in ensuring maximum transparency. Oh, by the way, I'm just...
She said it shouldn't have been a fight at all for the Speaker, for the President, for Congress to release every single file on behalf of these American women. When people that far apart politically are suddenly aligned on basic transparency, you know the dam is under serious pressure. And that's exactly why Mike Johnson is sprinting to the Senate. He admitted it himself. He said he called Senate Republican leader John Thune, walked him through his deep concerns, and is counting on the Senate to do what the House rules wouldn't let him do: stick in a poison pill and call it a fix. Listen carefully to the coded language here. Methodically, process, correct it in the Senate.
Do you acknowledge that by voting for this distribution today, that is a reversal for you, that you could have put this on the floor months ago and may not have even needed to have a discharge petition if you had supported it months ago?
No, it's not a reversal. As I just explained, we had big problems with the discharge from the moment it was filed. We talked with the authors. There was lots of people that went and pleaded with them to fix it so that everybody could be together, because we've been for maximum transparency. But again, there's a reason you have rules and processes here to ensure that this is not done haphazardly. And
that's how soft authoritarianism works in a democracy. You don't openly say, we're going to bury this. You say, we're just trying to be responsible. You wrap delay in the language of prudence. You talk about serious deficiencies without ever admitting that the core thing you're uncomfortable with is sunlight. Meanwhile, Johnson's allies are out there doing what the MAGA movement always does when it's cornered: projection. You had Republican Congresswoman Harriet Hageman claiming that Epstein was one of yours, pointing the finger at Democrats, insisting that it's really the left that's aligned with this scandal. No evidence, just vibes and rage. Projection is the beating heart of Trumpism. Anytime they're nervous about what might come out, they accuse the other side first. We've seen reporting that in thousands of Epstein-related email threads, Trump's name appears again and again.
We're trying to somehow tie President Trump to the scandal. President Trump has nothing to do with it. He has said himself he has nothing to hide. And that's clearly what they've been trying to do. They're trying to attack President Trump. This is what they've done. They weaponized the justice system over the last several years to go after him, and this is their latest attempt.
That doesn't by itself prove criminal conduct, but it does explain why his political machine would be very invested in narrowing what the public gets to see and how quickly it gets to see it. When your movement is built on personality cult instead of principle, protecting the leader comes before protecting the truth. And just to underline how deep this culture of secrecy runs, look at Donald Trump's own behavior when pressed about these files. In the Oval Office, when a woman reporter asked why he was waiting on Congress and not simply releasing what he could himself, he didn't calmly answer. He attacked her personally, said it wasn't the question, it was her attitude, called her a terrible reporter and a terrible person, and threatened her professional standing for daring to ask. That's how authoritarians react when you poke at their secrets. So put all of this together. Survivors saying, release the damn files. A 427-1 vote in the House.
perhaps you should look in the mirror. It is one of yours. It is one of yours. It is the Democrats that were the fixers and the attorneys for Jeffrey Epstein. So I guess that it's very difficult for me to take you seriously as you attempt to turn this into yet another attack and another way to get Donald Trump. This isn't about Donald Trump. This is about the Democrats who were aligned with Jeffrey Epstein.
Grassroots pressure across the spectrum to stop protecting predators and their enablers. And in response, you have a MAGA speaker who spent months stonewalling, who only backed down when he was guaranteed a political defeat, and who is now openly coordinating with the Senate to correct the bill that forced his hand. This isn't just a story about one resolution. It's a stress test of what kind of country we want to be. Do we live in a democracy where even the most powerful men, billionaires, politicians, presidents, are subject to the same rule of law as everyone else? Or do we live in a system where the rules bend and warp anytime accountability gets too close to the people at the top?
That is wrong. Do not let the Senate muck this bill up. And if you're a party to that in the Senate, you are part of this cover-up that we are trying to expose. I am sorry if one of your billionaire donors is going to get embarrassed because he went to Rape Island. That is what they have coming. In fact, they need to be on the other side of bars, a lot of them. Some of them will be embarrassed, but some of them need to go to prison, and the survivors know that. So how will we know if this bill has been successful? We will know when there are men, rich men, in handcuffs being perp-walked to the jail. And until then, this is still a cover-up.
When Johnson talks about new victims, he's not talking about the girls whose lives were shattered. He's talking about reputations. He's telling you that in his hierarchy of concern, reputational damage to elites is comparable to physical and psychological harm to children. That's the moral rot that seeps in when a movement spends years telling its base that the real problem isn't abuse, it's exposure. The good news is this. For once, the dam cracked. Under pressure, the House had to move. Under pressure, they had to go on record. That happened because survivors spoke up, because journalists kept digging, because ordinary people refused to let this get memory hold. The challenge now is to keep that pressure focused where it belongs, on the Senate, on leadership in both parties, and on anyone who thinks they can quietly correct our right to know what was done in our name and on our soil. In the end, this isn't just about Epstein. It's about whether the truth belongs to the people or to the powerful. It's about whether we let fear, spin, and disinformation turn our institutions into shields for the well-connected. A pro-democracy movement doesn't flinch from sunlight. It demands it. And if MAGA Mike and his allies are in utter terror at the thought of these files coming out, that tells you everything you need to know about which side of that line they're standing on.